How well do functional and structural 3D prints stand up over years of use at home and in the workshop? Overall, very, very happy with how this turned out, and it's been working exceptionally well. I've been designing and printing functional 3D printed parts for about 6.5 years now, starting with ABS on my open bed slinger and at A8, which gave me all kinds of trouble, and more recently making structural prints on the Cheetah Plus 4 and now the Bambu H2D as well. So let's take a look at all the prints that I still have and use and see how they've stood up, and that includes looking at some that have failed as well. And we'll try and figure out why and what we need to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. So stick around. I'm going to try and go from oldest to newest 3D print. So this is my Milwaukee compound slide saw, and it comes with this rectangular opening here, which is pretty much useless to try and attach anything to. Not quite sure why it's designed this way. I designed this, which is an adapter that goes up inside. This is one of my oldest prints. It's printed from ABS on my Anna A8, and you can see the quality of the print is not very good, but it certainly has done the job. And this is printed completely solid, and you can see there's quite a bit of life left in it. It's still somewhat flexible. The issue with a print like this is that it tends to want to warp if you print it completely solid, and there's a very little contact area with the build plate, so this needs to be printed with something like a brim or mouse ears maybe. So this goes up inside there, and it comes off on an angle for the hose. It can also go the other way. And I've modified this rubber boot so this can be flipped upside down. It can come up as well if we need it to. So it may not be one of my nicest 3D prints, but it has worked really well. And this saw actually does a great job of collecting the sawdust now. Next up we have this, which is meant to accept one of these filters. And it does take the smaller one as well. So it goes on here, like so, and then clamps back down. And then inside of the bucket we have some brushes. So this goes in, top goes on. I use the drill and I spin it, and this actually works really well. My biggest complaint with this is that it tends to want to compress the top here down. It does not seat very well. So this is maybe not my best design in the world, but it has lasted. If I were to do this again, I would design it completely differently. But you see here a large nut embedded again into this ABS. This was printed on my Annette A8 as well. Also looks pretty terrible, but it has worked, and I still use this to this day. In fact, the bucket where I put the screws through is starting to crack here. So I would say that we have another success here, but this needs to be redesigned to be much more user-friendly, much quicker, all in one, all 3D printed, that anybody can print themselves at home. This is one of my most popular designs. This was designed because of my Bowflex not meeting my expectations, the bench that is. So this fits into the bench and allows more adjustability for the back, and I also have a similar piece that is allowing more adjustability for the seat as well. I also created a cylinder. Originally that was 3D printed, but I ended up changing that to a steel cylinder because it is so small and so thin. So this has remained pretty much the same over time. It's changed in length to become a little bit shorter so that it can be used on the newer bench version as well. But the newest ones have a webbing inside. They have extra walls, and I did that by creating voids in the design. So it has the extra walls that go from bottom all the way to top, just to make sure that I never have any issue with this as it tries to transfer the load from the leg that comes down into here, down to the steel frame. These are now being printed in PETG. This one was printed in ABS, I think on my Ender 3 version 2, with pretty decent results, but all of my PETG versions have great layer adhesion, and I don't need to worry as much about warpage issues. I like to print them with 0.6mm nozzle, 6 walls, and 6 tops, 6 bottoms as well. I can go with gyroid, or I can go with a cubic for the infill. So this is my old General bandsaw. Definitely has seen a lot of use. And one of the issues with a lot of these old machines is that they have no dust collection. So you see a lot of my videos, I'm creating dust collection adapters for this. I actually have a video here where I 3D scanned the entire bottom and created this. And it's just a little bit intricate, never was designed to have dust collection on it. So This is actually working really well. The only issue is that it only really works when the table is in this position. I can't tilt the table with this mounted to it, so there's no point in designing it this way. I would definitely redesign this. And I would have a big air inlet on this side equal to this side so that it can pull in a lot of air, pull all of the dust that's coming down from there from the side into the dust collection here. So at some point I may end up redesigning this and releasing that file as well. But as far as the structural integrity goes, everything has lasted. This one was printed from PETG. I think this was printed on my Ender 3 version 2, not 100% sure. Definitely like PETG, and again, this one was printed 100% solid, or very close to it. So this is an old, I think it's a kettle car. We ended up repainting the frame, taking off this front cover, and I think it was missing only one pedal. The other one was very worn down though. So these are 3D printed. They are again 3D printed from ABS. They probably were a little bit tighter when we first started, but this has been going for years and years, and my kids have had a lot of use out of this. And if I were to print this again, I probably would print it pretty much the same. Might have a little bit different grip design on there, but overall these have worked exceptionally well. And here is the other side, same thing. So there's a little tiny clip in there that just locks it in place. That's why there's a slot in there. And I think it's still got some life left in it as well. If we end up selling this at some point, I'm not sure if anybody would want to buy it, I would probably end up 3D printing some with my new printers just so that they look a little bit nicer, and there'd be a little less slop in there as well. This is my old Walker Turner drill press that I restored, and probably one of my favorite 3D prints of all is this one here. It's so simple, but I love it because it is so flippin' handy. You've got the chuck key here, it's always easily accessible, and this looks pretty good because it kind of matches the red here as well, but there's also a magnet embedded in there, so it holds the chuck key, has a positive place to sit, it's at the right angle, it's very safe, easy to grab, all the good stuff that you want in a structural 3D print. Now this doesn't take a lot of abuse, I admit. Obviously there's not really much that can go wrong with it. This one is printed pretty much with the same settings as all of my prints, 6 walls, 6 tops, 6 bottoms, and cubic or gyroid infill. And this one doesn't take a ton of abuse, so it should last as long as the drill press itself. And I'll show you the print that saved me the most time, which is right in here. And I did make a video on this one as well. You can see my skimmer is working just like it should. There's not a lot coming in the pool at the moment. It depends how windy it is because we do have quite a few trees up above the pool and around the pool as well. When we got here, this was getting jammed up and it was not working properly. And the reason was because inside the skimmer box, there are 2 little clips for pins and they were broken. Well, one of them was broken. There are these plates that I 3D printed on both sides. And I've actually ended up redoing it, and the reason for that, oh, you can see it better in here. There's one plate there, there's another plate there. This one's printed from PETG, which is Prusament, and that one is printed from just generic PETG, and this is PETG as well. In the back here, there's a foam piece just to keep it at the right level. You can see how it moves around there, and it allows the water to come in just from the surface there, picking up any debris on the surface. So that's actually worked out extremely well. Probably the biggest time saver of any 3D print that I've ever made. Now I did end up redoing this because the clip that was on this side inside the housing ended up breaking after I made the video. So I ended up just duplicating what I did on this side over here, and then I made a new one of these that was a little bit shorter as well. So this has worked incredibly well. Very happy with this, and you can see that it has lasted. And over on the wall here we have these green hooks. These are printed from PETG. Again, pretty much the same print settings as I usually use, except for I had no tops and bottoms on this one. Just experimenting with some different ideas, but lots of walls. These I'm happy to have in the shop and I use them all the time, mainly hanging extension cords or my air compressor hose on here. That works pretty well too. The issue with these is that they look awful. They don't match anything in my shop. So if I was to reprint these, I would pick a color like gray or red or black and go with something like that, and I'd probably paint this as well, either to match the wall or to match the hooks. So very happy with how these turned out, and they've lasted and they're quite strong. They just don't look very good. This 3D printed tote for my hand plane, and this is a hand plane I actually really like to use. I like the size of this one more than any of the other ones that I have. This is what the tote originally looked like. There was a crack here, so I ended up replacing it with a 3D printed version. This is carbon fiber filament, and it's a little bit stiff. It does have a steel pin that goes down through it for a little bit of reinforcement, but I've had no issue with this in breaking. I've never replaced it. I also replaced this knob at the same time. There has been a video or a few videos made about carbon fiber filament, and these little tiny fibers may be getting stuck in your hands. So if you're doing something like this where your hands are constantly meant to contact this, you might want to print it from a different material. But overall, very happy with this. There were some suggestions about maybe printing this laying down flat, but I did not do that intentionally because I wanted to duplicate this shape as best that I could. And really the only way to do that is either to make it in two parts and maybe glue them together, having them lay down completely flat. That would work. Or to print it the way that I did, which is to print it this way, standing up like that. And again, these are printed pretty much with the same settings that I usually use, heavy duty. This one could have been probably printed completely solid for a little bit better result though. These quick grip clamp pads that I designed, these ones were actually made on the H2D because I've got the multicolor TPU in there. Actually, it's multi-material. It's PETG on the inside and TPU on the outside. So I printed in this pink color and also in this yellow color. These are really, really handy because a lot of the times these pads go missing. They don't fit on very well, to be honest with you, so they slide off. These ones here have not had that issue at all because I redesigned them intentionally to not slide off. So these are printed completely solid. There's not really much there, so there's not a lot of material usage. They do tend to take a little while to print though because they are printed from TPU, and TPU is pretty slow. So there's really nothing that can go wrong with these. The only real issue is that the adhesive that I was using, PL Premium polyurethane adhesive, seems to really like to bond. It looks like if I try and peel it off, it actually wants to peel off some of the TPU. So, you know, if I'm desperate and I really want some beautiful looking clamp pads, then I can just reprint these. It's really not going to cost me very much, but I'm actually okay with leaving them as is for now. And if eventually they wear out, then I'll replace them at that point. And these are the original ones that I printed, and they're still working great. Again, they're all filled up with polyurethane adhesive, but I still think they have tons of life left in them. They just don't look quite as good. And this is not my print, but the issue that I ran into with this is that this is the last clip that I have. All of these have broken on me. So this fits on here. The dust collection hose goes in like this, and it puts a bit of pressure on the outside there. Now I think there's supposed to be a top piece here, but this is something that is behind a paywall. I have to pay for this if I want to 3D print these. So I'm not going to do that. I would rather just redesign it myself. You know, I don't really understand why this is separate at all. It does not need to be, in my opinion. This should all be integrated into one piece, but maybe there's some reason for it. It goes from a thick section to a thin section while it's breaking at that thin section. And part of the reason as well is this is not printed completely solid. If I were to do this again, I would print it from PETG or maybe ABS, something like that. I would print it completely solid. I might even just have a cradle section at the bottom and have a strap coming around the top too and avoid that problem completely. So if you're printing something like this, you need to print it completely solid or make sure it's designed that it's beefy enough to resist some of that force as this applies that pressure. There's a chance that this can also get snagged up or caught up, and it's going to force this to the side, and it could actually end up breaking it off, which is what's happened in my case. So I will be redesigning these in the future. I will make sure that those plans are available to anyone else for free. This was supposed to have a clip, that one, and I think that's it. So there are 3 clips that have broken, and my solution is just to use some electrical tape. And even that isn't working perfectly. So I actually bought these zip ties, and maybe they would work pretty well for going up there too. So I may try that later on as well, but I don't think the zip tie is going to work at all for this one. There's nothing to connect it to. On my lathe, I tested whether I could 3D print a TPU lathe belt. And unfortunately, the issue with TPU, well, there's 2 issues. One is that over time it stretches, and it retains that stretched or that new length. and so it wouldn't work for the lathe just from that. And the other issue is that TPU is actually more slippery than you'd think. It's not like a regular rubber. There's not much grip on to these. So it doesn't really work at all for a belt for a lathe, unfortunately. You'd really want to stick with something more traditional, like either the leather or a rubber belt with some reinforcement fibers in there. And here we have the bike saddle that I designed, and I'm still using this. And I will say that even though this has lasted, and it's just stuck on there with glue gun, if you can believe it, it's not as comfortable as it should be. And part of the reason for that is because it's a little bit too stiff. Even though I printed it with no walls other than in these areas here, it's just a little bit too much. So I'd like to reprint this with some different settings and with a different TPU as well, just so I can get it a little bit more flexible. I think I would remove those walls and just print it with a different density than this one, just so it's a little bit harder, but not quite this hard. Overall though, pretty good, and I'm still using this, and I'm still finding this much more comfortable than the previous bike saddle that I was using. So this may be my favorite 3D print of any that I've done, partially because of the color, partially because of how the logo stands out. But I think more than those things, it's how this is actually used. I was able to adapt the magmate on to the side here, so it makes it super easy to connect and disconnect my dust collection system to this. This is what it looked like before. Just had this where the hose would fit over top, and through suction it would more or less stay on. If you look inside there, well, it's not that easy to see. There's a little bit of dust in the inside corner just around there that likes to build up, but everywhere else it stays very clean. Normally I like to print in PETG, but this was only available in this color in PLA at the time that I made the video. So I think because this is stored inside and it's not under a huge amount of stress or anything like that, the PLA should work just fine. I got this dust collector for free, but I had to put some work into it. The impeller that came with it is completely broken. There's a whole bunch of cracks in here. So what I've been trying to do is do a combination of 3D printing and some woodworking as well to come up with different impeller designs. So this is I think the third impeller design that I came up with. This is a completely solid printed hub. You can see how it was connected there. There were some screws. And this went on top of the steel shaft coming out of the motor. The issue that I ran into is that after a couple months, this started to loosen up. This is just PLA, and it's just not really intended to fit over a shaft and lock perfectly tight in place. Not to mention the set screws that were in here were not in very deep, and it was just very awkward to tighten those set screws as well. So what I ended up doing was a compromise where I welded up this steel hub that fits onto the motor. That then mounts to this wooden frame, and I have some 3D prints in here as well. And this has been working really good for me. The only thing that I would say is that my design probably should be modified a little bit. I think I'll go back to more like this straight bladed system because you end up getting a little bit of sawdust buildup you can see here. Now it's not really a huge issue for me, but I would prefer that I'm not having any issue with balancing over time. If there's a little bit more sawdust on some of these than other ones, what I'll probably end up doing is another version with straight blades or some other design. Overall, very, very happy with how this turned out, and it's been working exceptionally well. While we're talking about dust collection, at the other end here, I also have that magmate connector. This is also printed from PETG, but it's printed from that translucent PETG. It's been working great. You can actually drop this right on the floor and it can absorb the impact, no problem at all. Another one that's been a huge benefit is this one, this magmate connector for my rigid jointer. So before, this would just have the sawdust flowing out of here, right onto the floor, underneath my other tools, underneath the jointer. Very happy with how these have turned out. They're all the same settings as I would typically use, and I like to print with PETG for these parts as well. It's flexible enough, and they're printed pretty much completely solid. There's a bit of an area in here where it's a bit thicker that's printed with some infill. And then we have these, which are push sticks that I designed based off of some antique handsaws that I have, and I really like these. I like both the looks, and I also like the fact that they function really well. So I've been using those all the time. They just store easily at the side of the saw. You can store them there. Store them there. But when it comes to printing something like this, when safety is a huge factor, you definitely do not want to skimp on how many walls, how many tops, and how many bottoms you have. So again, I like to use the 6 walls, 6 tops, 6 bottoms, and for this 35% infill. These are printed with PLA. PETG, ABS is probably a better option. I'm going to keep these handy at my saw at all times, just on the side there. That way they're easy to grab and use. Now these are pretty new, so I haven't used these over a long period of time. We'll have to see how well they stand up over time also. This is printed from PETG. It has lasted, and this goes on top there to help with germination of plants. But the rest of it is printed from PLA, and let me take you in close and show you what the issue is with this. This is warping over time. The lid is not fitting on there very well anymore. You can see it doesn't really seat properly. And not that this is a huge issue, it depends how you want to use these, but if I were to redo this, I would definitely be printing this from either PETG or from ABS, something like that. So this is a temporary post cap that I printed, and this has just been at the front of our house in the sun, and it's cooling off a little bit, but you can see it's actually still flexible. And it is really, really badly warped. So certain things that you're going to be printing them and putting them outside, you should be printing from a material that is suitable for that, like ASA. You can use ABS, polycarbonate. PETG is not too bad. I would say PETG is a little bit risky if you're going to be printing with a dark color, but light colors should be fine to go outside. This one, for example, is printed from PETG, and I haven't really noticed any warpage issue at all. These are some apple trees that I've been growing from seed, so obviously this actually does work to germinate these. And while we're at it, I can show you the silver maples that I've been germinating from seed as well. Maybe not the most desirable tree to have, but it is a tree nonetheless, and the roots have been coming right out the bottom just like they're supposed to. But even the white version has warped as well. So printing in white and putting that outside doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to warp. It still does warp. It might not be quite as bad as the black version though. My functional and structural 3D prints have lasted a lot longer than I expected, although some of them still need more time to test to see how long they'll really live for. The biggest issue that I've run into lately is which material to print with to deal with the heat of the summer outside. Now in the case of the pool skimmer parts, they're kept cool with water, but anything exposed just to air printed in PLA will warp pretty much the first time it sees the sun, and it only gets worse after that. So ASA, ABS, or PETG are all better choices for that. For my structural or functional parts, when I print with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, I like to use 0.2 for the layer height. Minimum 6 walls, 6 tops, 6 bottoms, and 35% gyroid infill works well, but cubic works well. There's quite a few good choices out there now. The gyroid I like because it doesn't pass over itself on the same layer. Now when my parts have thin walls, normally that would be a bad thing, but actually it works out well because it will end up being printed completely solid with those settings. And removing that little bit of infill section between the inner and outer surfaces makes quite a bit of difference in the ability for it to flex and not break. Going way back to when I first started to 3D print, I was using 2 walls and 15% infill, and those prints never lasted. I quickly moved to 6s for everything and 35% infill, and since that point I stopped having issues. Now for certain higher load applications, I will print the parts 100% solid because I've already taken the time to design and print it. It's better just to spend a bit of extra money and make sure the parts last. I don't really think about my parts failing anymore. I think more about how well they're actually going to perform, and that I think is a good thing. And it makes me hopeful that we'll be able to do even more with 3D printing in the future with different filaments, non-planar 3D printing, and even better printers. So I'm looking forward to seeing what new innovative ideas companies come out with next to make our prints even stronger and last even longer. In my experience, printing heavy duty will make our prints last at least 5 years, but probably much longer. For a better guarantee, printing completely solid, if you can, is a better option as well. If you found this video helpful, hit that like and subscribe. Next week is a very cool video showing off how to deal not only with prints outside, but how we can use 3D printing to help us harness the elements. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this channel and making these videos possible. And thank you for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you on the next one.